The sun was just starting to rise over the city, painting the dirty alley in shades of orange and gray. Leo, a skinny boy no older than 13, crouched by a pile of trash bags. His hands moved quickly, sorting through cans and bottles he could sell for a few coins. This was his life, scavenging to survive. But then, something stopped him cold. A soft cry broke through the quiet morning air. At first, he thought it might be a stray cat or maybe his imagination. But the sound came again, weaker this time. Leo followed the noise to a dark corner of the alley. There, near an overflowing dumpster, were two tiny bundles wrapped in thin blankets. Babies, twins. Their faces were red from crying, and their little fists waved helplessly in the chilly air. For a moment, Leo just stood there, frozen. He didn't know much about babies, but he knew they couldn't stay here. Not in this filthy place, not alone. "Don't worry," he whispered softly, picking them up one by one. "I'll take care of you." With the twins cradled carefully in his arms, Leo walked back to his makeshift shelter under a bridge. He had nothing to give them, no food, no blankets, no way to keep them warm. But he promised himself he'd figure it out. Somehow. Little did he know, this act of kindness would change everything. For him, for the babies, and for a desperate father searching all over the city for his missing children. Back under the bridge, Leo laid the twins down on a pile of old newspapers he had collected. They were still crying, their tiny faces scrunched up in discomfort. He didn't know much about babies, but he knew they needed food and fast. Leo rummaged through his things, finding a plastic bottle cap and a scrap of clean cloth. Using water from a nearby fountain, he soaked the cloth and dripped small amounts into their mouths. It wasn't perfect, but it seemed to calm them down a little. "They're hungry," he muttered to himself, looking at their frail bodies. "I need real milk." The problem was, Leo barely had enough money to feed himself. Every coin he earned went toward scraps of bread or stale pastries from street vendors. But these weren't just any kids, they depended on him now. That afternoon, Leo made his way to a corner store, clutching a handful of coins he'd saved. The shopkeeper, an older woman named Mrs. Patel, raised an eyebrow when she saw him. "What do you want?" she asked gruffly. I need baby formula," Leo stammered, holding out his coins. "Please," Mrs. Patel frowned. "You don't look like you can afford this." "It's not for me," Leo said quickly. "It's for two babies I found. They're starving, and I don't know what else to do." Something in his voice must have struck a chord because Mrs. Patel sighed and handed him a small can of formula. "Take it," she said, "but next time bring them here. I'll help however I can." Leo nodded gratefully, clutching the can tightly as he ran back to the twins. Later that night, as the babies slept peacefully after their first proper meal, Leo sat beside them, staring at their tiny faces. He thought about his own parents who had died in a fire years ago. Since then, he'd been alone, fighting to survive day by day. "You won't be alone anymore?" he whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from one of the babies' foreheads. "I promise." Even though he had no idea how he'd manage, Leo felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The next morning, Leo returned to Mrs. Patel's store with the twins wrapped snugly in his arms. She smiled warmly when she saw them, her tough exterior softening instantly. "Here," she said, handing him a bag filled with diapers, wipes, and another can of formula. "This should last you a few days." Leo blinked in surprise. I don't have enough money for all this." "It's on me," Mrs. Patel replied firmly. "You're doing something good, boy. The world needs more people like you." Tears welled up in Leo's eyes as he thanked her. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, he felt like someone cared. Not just about him, but about what he was trying to do. Word spread quickly among the other street vendors. By the end of the week, Leo had become something of a local legend. A fruit seller gave him bananas and apples to mash into baby food. A tailor stitched together soft blankets using leftover fabric scraps. Even strangers passing by would drop coins or snacks into his hands, saying, "For the babies." One evening, as Leo fed the twins under the flickering light of a street lamp, an elderly man approached him. His face was weathered, his clothes patched and worn. "I heard about you," the man said gruffly, holding out a small thermos. "It's warm milk. Thought they might need it." Leo accepted the gift with trembling hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "But why are you helping me?" The man shrugged. "Because you remind me of my grandson. He was your age once, kind-hearted, always looking out for others. Seeing you makes me believe there's still good left in this world." That night, as Leo tucked the twins into their makeshift bed, he thought about all the people who had stepped up to help. They didn't owe him anything, yet they gave freely, because they saw the effort he was putting in, the love he was showing these two tiny lives. It made him realize something important. Kindness wasn't just about giving. It was also about inspiring others to give. And somehow, without meaning to, he had started a chain reaction. As he drifted off to sleep beside the twins, Leo felt a strange sense of peace. Life was still hard, and there were no guarantees for tomorrow, but for now they were safe. Together. And that was enough. One afternoon, as Leo sat feeding the twins near the corner store, a young woman approached him. She wore bright clothes and carried a camera around her neck. "Hi," she said with a friendly smile. "I'm Priya, a freelance journalist. Can I ask you some questions?" Leo hesitated, clutching the babies protectively. "Why? I heard about what you're doing. Taking care of these little ones despite everything. It's inspiring. People should know your story." At first, Leo refused. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to keep the twins safe. But Mrs. Patel encouraged him. "Let her share your story, boy. Maybe someone out there can help even more." Reluctantly, Leo agreed. Priya filmed him talking softly to the twins, showing how he fed them, changed their diapers, and rocked them to sleep. She captured close-ups of his tired face, his torn clothes, and the makeshift shelter under the bridge. The video went online that evening. By morning, it had thousands of views, and within days, millions. Comments poured in from all over the world. "This boy is a hero. How can we help him and the babies? What kind of system lets children live like this?" News outlets picked up the story, dubbing Leo the guardian angel. Donations flooded in: money, baby supplies, even offers of adoption. Strangers sent heartfelt messages, calling him an example of humanity at its best. But not everyone had good intentions. One evening, as Leo walked back to his shelter, two men blocked his path. They were dressed in suits, their faces cold and calculating. "We'll take the kids off your hands," one of them said, reaching for the twins. Leo stepped back, clutching them tightly. "No way. Who are you?" "That's none of your business," the other man sneered. "Just hand them over, and we'll make sure you're compensated." Leo's heart raced. Something felt wrong, very wrong. "Leave us alone," he snapped, backing away quickly. He ran all the way back to the bridge, his mind spinning. Why did those men want the twins? Were they connected to whoever left them in the alley? The next day, Priya returned with news. "Be careful, Leo," she warned. "Some people online are saying the babies might belong to a rich family. If that's true, things could get dangerous." Leo swallowed hard. He hadn't thought about who the twins' parents might be, or why they'd been abandoned. All he knew was that he couldn't let anyone hurt them. As the sun set that evening, Leo held the twins close, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. "No matter what happens," he murmured, "I won't let anyone take you away." Little did he know, the truth was closer than he imagined, and it would change everything. Michael Hayes sat in his lavish office, staring blankly at the stack of papers in front of him. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of a clock, a sound that had become deafening over the past few months. It had been 97 days since his twin daughters, Lily and Ava, were taken from their stroller outside a cafe. The nanny responsible had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only shattered trust and unanswered questions. Every lead had turned into a dead end. Every phone call ended in disappointment. Michael had hired private investigators, offered hefty rewards, even appeared on national television pleading for help, but nothing brought his girls back. At night, he would sit by their empty cribs, clutching stuffed animals they used to love. Guilt consumed him. He should have been there, He should have protected them. One evening, as he scrolled through social media hoping for any scrap of information, a video caught his eye. It showed a young boy caring for two babies under a bridge. The caption read, "Homeless teen risks everything to save abandoned twins." Something about the babies' faces struck him. They looked so familiar. Heart-pounding, Michael clicked play. As the camera zoomed in on one of the infants, he froze. There it was, a tiny birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her left ear. It was Lily. Tears blurred his vision as he watched the rest of the video. The boy, Leo, was feeding them, talking to them softly, promising to keep them safe. Michael felt a surge of emotions. Relief that his daughters were alive, gratitude toward the stranger who saved them, and anger at whoever left them in that alley. He grabbed his phone and called his assistant. "I need you to find this boy," he said urgently. "Right now." Within hours, Michael had tracked down the location mentioned in the video, the corner store owned by Mrs. Patel. He drove there himself, his mind racing with questions. Who was this boy? Why were his daughters abandoned? And most importantly, were they truly safe? When he arrived, Mrs. Patel recognized him immediately from the news. "You're their father," she said, her voice trembling. "The babies belong to you." "Yes," Michael replied, struggling to stay calm. "Where are they now?" "They're with Leo under the bridge. But be careful. He's very protective of them." Michael nodded, already heading toward the door. For the first time in months, he felt hope. As he approached the shelter under the bridge, he saw them. A young boy sitting cross-legged on the ground, cradling two sleeping babies in his arms. "Leo?" Michael called softly, stepping closer. Leo looked up, startled but wary. "Who are you?" "I'm Michael Hayes," he said, his voice breaking. "And those are my daughters." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Leo gently laid the twins down and stood up, meeting Michael's gaze. "I didn't know," Leo whispered. "I swear I didn't know they were yours." Michael shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "You saved them," he said hoarsely. "Thank you." In that moment, both men understood. They were connected not just by the twins, but by the lengths they'd gone to protect them. The air was thick with tension as Michael knelt beside the sleeping twins. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch their tiny faces, brushing a finger against Lily's crescent-shaped birthmark. Tears streamed down his cheeks unchecked. "They're safe," he whispered, more to himself than to Leo. "You kept them safe." Leo stood nearby, watching silently. He wanted to believe this man was telling the truth, but after everything he'd been through, trust didn't come easily. "How do I know you're really their father?" Leo asked finally, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. Michael pulled out his wallet and handed over a family photo. It showed him smiling alongside his wife and the twins when they were just a few weeks old. Leo studied the picture carefully, comparing it to the babies asleep before him. There was no denying it, they were the same children. "Why were they left in that alley?" Leo demanded, his tone sharp now. "Who would do something like that?" Michael sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know all the details yet, but we think it was our nanny. She disappeared the day they went missing. We've been looking for her, and for them, ever since." Leo frowned, still unsure if he should hand over the twins. But then he noticed something, the way Michael looked at them. It wasn't just relief or gratitude. It was love, pure, unshakable love. "You can take them," Leo said quietly, stepping back. "But promise me one thing." "Anything," Michael replied without hesitation. "Promise me you'll never let anyone hurt them again." "I swear," Michael vowed, his voice breaking. "I failed them once. I won't fail them again." With that, Leo gently woke the twins, murmuring soft reassurances as they stirred. When they opened their eyes, Michael felt his heart crack wide open. "Lily? Ava?" he choked out, holding out his arms. At first, the babies hesitated, clinging to Leo. But then, as if sensing familiarity, they reached for Michael. He scooped them up, hugging them tightly as sobs racked his body. Leo watched from a distance, feeling a mix of joy and loss. These little girls had become his world over the past few days, and now they were leaving it. "Thank you," Michael said again, turning to Leo. "You saved their lives. I owe you everything." Leo shrugged, trying to play it cool, but his voice betrayed him. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," Michael countered firmly. "Not everyone would have done what you did. You're extraordinary, Leo, and I want to repay you, not just for saving my daughters, but for reminding me what true courage looks like." Leo blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Michael hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "If you'll let me, I'd like to bring you home with us. Give you a fresh start. A chance to be part of our family." For a moment, Leo couldn't speak. The idea of leaving the streets behind seemed impossible, like a dream too good to be true. I don't know," he stammered. "You don't have to decide right now," Michael said gently. "But please at least consider it. You've already given me back my daughters. Let me give you something in return." As dawn broke over the city, casting golden light across the river, Leo found himself nodding slowly. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new, something better. In the weeks that followed, Leo stepped into a world he had only seen from afar. A life filled with warmth, stability, and love. Michael kept his promise, welcoming Leo into his home as part of the family. At first, it felt surreal for Leo to sleep in a real bed, eat hot meals every day, and have clothes that fit him perfectly. But what touched him most was how Michael treated him, not as a charity case, but as a son. The twins, Lily and Ava, adjusted quickly too. They adored Leo, often crawling into his lap or giggling uncontrollably when he made funny faces at them. For Michael, watching this bond grow was a gift beyond measure. It reminded him of the joy he'd almost lost, and the second chance they all shared because of one boy's selflessness. Leo thrived under Michael's care. He enrolled in school for the first time in years, excelling in classes and making friends who admired his resilience. Yet despite his new surroundings, he never forgot where he came from. On weekends, he visited Mrs. Patel and the other street vendors who had helped him during his hardest days, bringing supplies and sharing stories about his new life. One sunny afternoon, Michael called everyone together in the backyard. The garden was alive with color. Roses bloomed along the fence, and butterflies danced in the breeze. "I wanted to thank you," Michael said, addressing Leo directly. "Not just for saving my daughters, but for teaching me what truly matters. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love, sacrifice, and standing by each other no matter what." Leo smiled shyly, looking down at the twins playing happily in the grass. "I should be thanking you," he replied softly. "You gave me a home, a future." Michael shook his head. "No, Leo, you gave us a future. Without you, I might never have found them, or learned how to be the father they deserve." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Leo realized something profound. Kindness wasn't just about changing others' lives. It could change your own too. And so, surrounded by laughter, love, and the promise of brighter tomorrows, Leo knew he'd finally found what he'd been searching for all along: a place to belong.